Well, soon we're going to move out the lathes and bring them home. And in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to move the milling machine out of here. And we've got a potential buyer for the milling machine, but he's not ready to take it out of here at this point. And he might not even take delivery. We don't have any money in hand, so it's still up for grabs. And if nothing happens by the time we're ready to commit to doing something about it, then we'll go with plan B, which will involve parting it out and scrapping what we can't sell. So that'll be a shame, but it is what it is. But the project at hand is getting it out of here. So we've got worked on it yesterday, got a pry bar under there, was able to jack it up, get some of the wood blocks that were underneath there out of there, and got a couple of pipes under there. But it's still, the majority of the weight's still sitting far back behind it. So what we're going to try and do is going to hook up to, I'm going to put a chain around that post right there, and got a come along, 1 ton come along, but that chain's too short to reach all the way out here to the opening. So I got to go get my other chain, and we're going to use the truck as an anchor. The Dodge 1 ton, that ought to hold it. So, and we're going to see if we can't edge that thing out and at the same time hopefully make it turn a little bit. Well, I'm all hooked up and I already started pulling it a little bit, and just using the come along, inching it forward. Now some of you might ask, well, if you got a chain to the truck, why not just pull the truck forward and use the truck? Well, it's all about control. I want to move this very slowly. I don't want a situation where this thing starts to get any momentum, because this is a lot of mass we got going here. And if it decides to start moving a little too quickly in an uncontrolled fashion, that's not going to be good for anybody. Could be disastrous. So I've got my boards still underneath here, and I can keep these kind of in a position so that I can actually keep track of how much it's moving as that space closes up, because my come along's way back here. And I can't quite see it move, but I could tell it has moved some. Alright, I only have 3 pipes for rollers, so I wish I had at least one more, but that's all I've got on hand. So I don't want to get this last pipe underneath the front until those other 2 pipes are further back, so I've got to pull forward some. But I really want this thing to turn more than it's turning right now. I got it out far enough. I had the rapid traverse. I had the table fed all the way over to there. And then when we tilted it to get the pipes underneath it, the handle got wedged in the wall, so I couldn't use the rapid traverse. I now was able to move the table back to the middle to balance it. But now I can see that if I leave the table there, I'm going to have trouble clearing this workbench that lathe number 1 is on. So, gonna, well, see if I get a pry bar from that backside and see if I can't swivel it on these pipes. Getting there, managed to turn it a little, reposition my pipes. The backmost pipe is almost ready to come out, so hopefully it won't tip forward and bottom out in the front there before the back pipe comes out, and I get a chance to put it in the front. Whew. Well, I was making really good progress, and then the front tipped forward and hit the ground as it rolled before I could get it to catch on the next roller. So my problem was I had the roller out in front there, and the front was down, and there was no way to pry underneath it. Got no clearance on the side here to do it from the sides, so as luck would have it, I've still got my floor jack that I brought out here, so I just rolled that down in the front here and put a stiff block of wood right underneath here down to the top of the floor jack, jacked up the front, and now I got my roller back underneath the front there so I can proceed with moving forward. Well, I doubled up my chain and it was still too long, so I had to pull the truck out further. So definitely making a lot of progress. As you can see, the roller again, problem is the roller doesn't want to go on the front, so I use the floor jack again and jack up the front just enough to get the roller under and repeat. I think we'll quit right there That way the thing's still out of the weather rather than taking it out here and tarping it today. Besides, the next challenge is going to be going down that little cliff right there. There's about a 6-inch drop off. So I'll probably want to get it up right close to the door and then see if I can't get the loader attached to it somehow on the Oliver. We'll see. But if I pull it out any further, that handle in the front, right there, it's going to keep me from closing these doors. Well, a decision has been made on the milling machine here. We are going to part it out and scrap it. In other words, we're going to sell what we can sell, the parts off of it, and then we're going to scrap the heavy parts that are too heavy to ship, or that no one would be willing to pay the shipping on. We tried selling the whole mill machine for a little above scrap value and didn't get any takers, and then started realizing that there was enough of a demand for some of these parts that we'll actually probably going to make out better if we actually take all the parts, sell all the parts off of it, and then scrap it, because the parts we're taking off aren't going to subtract that much weight from it, so we'll still get scrap value for the bulk of it, and then go from there. So got to take some parts off and take some photographs and go from there. Alright, we got that number 2 vise off. Been a few requests for that. And then somebody said they were looking for these things. It might be on the bottom of the table, and I don't see them anywhere. I forgot what they called them, but I don't see anything that even resembles what they were talking about, so I'm going to assume that they don't have them. Yeah. Nope, thinking they're not on there, so not going to worry about that. Let's see. The handles, we've got requests for the handles, so got to figure out how this is going to come off. That looks pretty straightforward. It's just a nut. Well, can't figure out how to get the table off. Got the gears off the end here for the rapid traverse. I got the rapid traverse rod out. That wasn't too hard. But now when I rotate the lever there all the way to the end, it stops. So I'm gonna have to maybe ask for a little help online to figure that out. I also tried same thing with this here. I can bring this up to the front and then it stops right there. So there's got to be a way to get that off. Did a little research online, and I think I know how this rod, this lead screw or feed rod, whatever you want to call it, comes out. I think you have to take off this support right here, and then I think it might unthread from the other end. Alright, so I got that block off, so now I think, oh, maybe the rod's going to come this way. Yeah, that would make sense, because what happens is when you're turning it, the screw's going to hit up against the back of that block that I took out. With the block removed, I think it can unscrew this way. Of course, you can only have the handle on so long before the threads disappear. Alright, so yeah, just keep turning this and it is coming out. I've decided to see if I could take this gear off, and that'll hopefully take this sleeve off. If I could take this whole assembly off, and then I think the screw will come out this side. At least that's just the theory right now. Doesn't want to go that way, so let's see if we can get it to go this way. But to make this stuff come out, It looks like this collar right here has a set screw in it, so I'm going to loosen that set screw and see what that does for me. Okay, well, I've backed the rod back out in the other direction so that it's completely out of the way, so that I can take this off. I've removed that set screw, and it's the only one I see. There's a hole over here, but there's nothing in it. So, I don't know if that's just pressed on there, or whether or not that actually screws on. So it's got these holes that look like they might be to hold a tool or something, or a dowel in place, or a pin to keep it from turning. So first I'm going to try and just lightly pry it over and see if it moves at all. Boy, what a lucky guess that was. So what you do is you insert a pin in there, and then the pin will hit this little ground out area right here and kind of lock in there and keep that collar from turning. And then you wrap a rag around this gear so you don't damage it, and put a large wrench on there, and you're able to actually turn it. I've got it so loose now that the whole thing is just going to unscrew by hand. Oh, one more thing, if you're going to be removing the table after you take that part out like I just did, you're going to make sure you take the bearing races. Tend to stay on the inside. There's one on the inside and one on the outside. They tend to stay stuck in there, so I've got them on here now. You can see that's a roller bearing in there, and it sits between two races, and then there's two of them. So you should have 4 races, 2 roller bearings, and that's the whole assembly. Okay, so now I've screwed it back, the rod back to this direction. And at this point I could put the handle back on to help me do it more quickly. And hopefully it'll come out now. Well, it's already come out further than the other side did. I think we got it. Here's the Acme thread. I believe that's an Acme thread. Okay. Still coming. Oh, gotta love it. Ooh, that's longer than I thought. Oh, you're kidding me. Hitting the wall. Oh, just tilt it up. Whoa. Ta-da! Well, hopefully somebody could use one of these. Now I'm going to remove this big screw, which I think is going to take this wedge thing out, which I think is called a jib. And I think there's one on the other side. Both of them are in the front. And I think what that will do is that will actually create a lot more play and make it a lot easier to slide the table back and forth now that the lead screw is completely removed. I guess on some machines they actually open this up enough that you can lift the table straight up, but on this machine it's a dovetail joint. Alright, once you get those 2 jib screws out, give the table a good push, and the jib will slide right out. The other side of that jib actually has got a little piece broken off. That almost looks like something. I don't know if it's replaceable or what the deal is. It's interesting the way that works. I don't know if that's goes through the whole thing. I would think there'd be 2 of them in there, but when I pulled this out and that went that way, the other one disappeared. So, alright, so what I gotta do now is, before I push that over any further, is I gotta lower this knee. This is the knee here. I gotta lower this knee as low as possible, and I'm gonna set up that bench right there, and I'm gonna see whether or not I could slide this table right off onto that bench. I've heard estimates of upwards of 250 pounds, but I mean it's solid steel, but 250 pounds? Well, we'll see. Well, I got a couple problems. Problem number one, my little bench there is nowhere near high enough. Problem number two, I just discovered that because of the way that this thing is on the end of this table must have to exit that way. In other words, I can't slide it off, it stops dead right there. So I think it's going to slide off only in that direction, which stinks because I got to move a bunch of stuff to make room to do that.